And by no means is it anything, you know, you probably do something very similar for native. And I think both like myself and Manuel Guzman, we all, you end up in the same result. It's just a matter of kind of how you personally like to, work through different things as well as combine it with other like responsibilities during the day. So what I do or what I will show you isn't necessarily how I always do it every day. Because sometimes it's, trying to get a couple invoices like uploaded and just in the process. And some days here recently, there may be 2 or 3 or 4 days, which is not great, but happens, where I'll just let invoices, kind of get to the inbox, and then I'll try to, do a whole bunch of them at the same time with a 30-day, typically a 30-day payment terms. I have a little bit of leeway, not a lot, but there's a couple times where there's been 2 or 3 days where I just haven't been able to get to it. So and I'll skim the email inbox because I do know there's one, like I had mentioned earlier this week, that is in fact net 15. So if I see that particular vendor's invoice, I do then obviously try to, excuse me, put that in the queue sooner rather than later so that it can go ahead and kind of start that process through. But we'll go ahead and, okay, so okay, great. You've already started the recording. So that's good. Let me see what I have on my screen here.
It makes sense but then that for efficiently. I usually try to process invoices with 30-day terms quickly.
Yep. No, and I was doing pretty good. Like I was, it's kind of funny. This particular work, given that it was kind of added to my uh already full-time job back in March, it became more of um a break, if you will, versus my actual base job, where it was kind of like, okay, I'm gonna go do, in each and every invoices for like the next 10 or 15 minutes. Because I do find if I do it every day, like, and sometimes even twice a day, because I'll see it come in the inbox, it was more of a quick break, if you will, kind of an odd statement, I realize, but
Quiero
it was a
decirle que puede empezar a explicar y que yo voy a grabar y a prestar atención y que adelante.
not certain if you were talking to
I'm
me or
I'm lost you in a second. Mm, please feel free to start explaining to the process.
okay. Yeah. So basically let me open the email
Yes.
inbox, which I had started talking to Manuel Guzman earlier this week to see how to get you access to this. And I think it's a simple ad, but I need to make sure I'm doing it right. So that is still on my list. If you want to make sure that we capture that in the task list, hopefully by Monday or Tuesday, I can definitely get you added to that once I figure out how to do that. So super simple and probably similar to what you do for native, but I'll just show you kind of what how I do it. And again, this goes to the fact of how I manage my own personal email, like in the sense of work email. And so everybody will do this differently, but this is how I do it, and you can figure out what works best for you. I believe a couple of these are, like, I think this one actually is going to require me to create a vendor. Ooh, hello, my That's not good. There we go. So this one I'm going to hold off on right now because we need to create the vendor first, and this isn't an easy, like, put it in a spreadsheet kind of thing. So I'll come back to this one later to process. Let's see here. Let's see what this is. So let me
I'm
also,
following the steps. I'm sorry. No,
no
I'm trying
worries.
to say I'm following the steps for creating a new vendor.
So no, so creating a new vendor is going to be done by Luthia. So she's going to go ahead and do that specifically. We're going to transition. We had talked that earlier in the week with Laura. Um, we're going to make, I don't say your life simpler, but we're going to make this process a little bit simpler where Luthia is going to own the creation of any vendor for each and every, especially since she needs to designate, like for us even, what bucket, like, so is it TDC, MSA, or SRA? And so we're going to separate that from like this transition. So she'll own the creation of a vendor. And then once that vendor has been created, then the goal will be for her to give you the pertinent information that you would need to, at minimum, add like this one line item, like for the new vendor. So she'll give you, in essence, the data that's required to put it in this database, which then feeds a couple of things that you do from here. So,
So my responsibility starts after Lucia creates the vendor,
correct.
right? Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
So ideally, I think I'm meeting with her and Laura on Monday. So, and again, it's not hard to do. It's just the fact that, like, I know in the 8 months that I've been doing this, I've had to have a lot of interaction with the each and every team and some vendors directly, like through email. Um, and we think it'll just it makes you being able to process invoices a lot simpler if Luthia, who has the capacity to set up a vendor, to do that, because she knows kind of the individuals on each and every team, the vendors, and she also knows specifically, the P&L item that it will need to go to. So once she set that up, then you'll probably, like, I said probably, sorry. She
Okay.
will, once she sets it up and it's in bill.com and it's all connected, then she'll send you basically, let's say, this one line item of information. And it's truly like vendor name, bucket. So like what P&L item it will hit. Because we don't, like Laura said earlier this week, each and every does not do accounting within bill.com. So there is no, adding the appropriate account name, or sorry, account number within bill.com. It's kind of more offline via this reporting and then the JP Morgan reporting that I will show you, probably not today, but probably earlier next week. So Luthia will give you this information. And then really what I do, so let's go over here. So outstanding invoices is the running list of all invoices that are in bill.com in the queue that I've already loaded, and they are either in some shape or form being processed. And so the list is already here. So ready to post. So I'll explain that here in a minute. But then uploaded pending approval. So that's like as soon as I've like loaded it into bill.com, I would go ahead and tag that here in the database, like, hey, it's uploaded and it's just pending approval. The first approval is approved and then pending payment release. So it's been approved by the first approver or by the approver, and then waiting for the second individual to actually release the payment. So earlier this week, I was kind of incorrectly, interchangeably saying two approvers. And Laura was is a good catch. Like, there's truly one approver and then the person who's actually releasing the payment, and then paid, obviously. And as soon as it goes to paid, then I actually move it to a different tab, so that as part of what will be the future JP Morgan file that I show you, you will have one tab per month in this database, that will then tie to like your monthly bank statement. So basically everything that you paid in the month of, we're now in October, will no longer be on this outstanding, ongoing tab, but it will be on the October paid tab as an example. So let's go super quick back over here. And here's a great example. So Annie is one of our contractors for each and every, and it looks like there's let's see what's on. So there's an invoice attached, and before I just send it to bill.com, I kind of just skim it real fast to make sure that I don't need anything or that anything's missing. And so Odyssey Group, invoice date, a bunch of descriptions that I don't necessarily need to know. Plus, it's really confusing as to what this work was for. But its balance due is $6,000. And I'm pretty sure that we have paid this invoice before. So I'll go back over here. Goodness gracious. Okay. And then I'll just kind of start typing, and you'll get used to the vendor names, so you'll know kind of what ends up showing up. But I just, start typing Odyssey and it automatically pops up. And for right now, just because I'm kind of working on it and I'm probably going to do a bunch of them in a row before I go to bill, I do ready to post. So that just kind of means like it's in the process. So I tend to do the spreadsheet first and then send it to bill. And I may do 3 or 4 or 5 or all of them in that inbox that hasn't been done yet. And then I'll go to bill and just kind of, go through them. So I will go ahead and get the invoice number. And everybody does this differently too. Like, do you, copy paste it? Do you type it? When I have both, so like I'm working from home today, so I kind of have my laptop and a really small monitor to the side. Sometimes I have, both monitors up or whatever. Date being 10/10, which is interesting since we just got it a couple of days ago, but okay. Then $6,000. And sometimes if I can figure it out, I'll put what it's for, because it helps also too, especially for the monthly ones, to know if by random circumstance I missed a month or didn't get an invoice for a particular month. So this particular vendor and the person who sends it is not necessarily one that's a monthly payment. This is an influencer. So it's more like when they do the work, or sorry, when they do a video or when they do work for each and every, versus like a platform or something that we pay a monthly fee to. So this person just kind of put that in. And this is more for you. The description, this doesn't go to anybody. And I started doing it, like I said, more so for the monthly subscriptions, and it was more helpful to me, especially like our this I can't think of the word, distributor. So we used to use Unis, which is a vendor, which is this vendor right here. But they've recently switched. I believe Native uses Stored, STORD, D as the distributor now for them. And so each and every is in the process of switching vendors. So hopefully this particular vendor will stop here pretty soon, because their invoices are getting kind of humorous in the sense of the amount that they're kind of charging each and every for. But again, not my issue there. Over here, the only reason why I would necessarily put a comment, again, this column is more for myself, especially if we get an invoice from a vendor, and it happens every once in a while for whatever reason. I don't know why, but like a vendor will have an invoice that says, let's say October 1st, but they physically didn't email it to us, or it got emailed to somebody on the team who then had to forward it like to the AP email. Sometimes I'll just go ahead and make a comment over here for myself so that, like, when I put it into the system and it says October 1st, but it says it was created like October 10th. Well, I didn't wait 10 days, to load it. That's just like I received it on that day or something to that effect. Only if it gets, kind of like longer than the 30 days, or in the sense of like the clock starting. So in my mind, like the clock starts like invoice date, but if I get the invoice, 10 days after the fact, it's kind of like a funky, the clock is a little uh, accelerated in reality, because now I have less time, or the whole team has less time to process that invoice. So this particular column, like I said, is really for your own benefit. And every once in a while, I will put something like that in bill.com. There is a box that I'll show you here in a minute, that does allow you to place comments in there, that does not get shared with the vendor unless you check it, unless you push the check mark. And a lot of times that's like me kind of communicating with either JJ, who is Juan in this case, but he goes by JJ, or Taylor, or Allison. If there is something like that, where I at least want to let them know, like, hey, it's in the queue to be on time, but at the same time, I'm not going to be concerned if it's a day or two late, because like we didn't get the invoice until like 10 days later or something like that. So that's kind of a long-winded explanation as to what I put in here, but that's kind of it happens. Vendors sometimes generate invoices, but then don't email them to you for whatever reason until later. So that's Odyssey. So we'll go back over here. And then what I will do is forward this to each and every's bill.com. So it's each and every at bill.com email. And then I will actually go ahead and remove this attachment, because it's their W-9 that Annie will send. A lot of times, by default, she'll attach it in case we don't have it. Most of the time with vendors, though, if we've used them already, we already have their W-9 like offline here. But going forward, that'll be with Luthia to make sure that it's loaded in bill.com for their future tax purpose needs. But I go ahead and that's something I've just learned over the couple of months here. Instead of sending an email just as is with a lot of attachments, if if two of those attachments have nothing to do with the invoice and are more, for the each and every contact, if they're, copied on here, I make my life easier on the bill.com side to only see the invoice later. That way I don't have to go through the process of deleting it from the inbox over there when it's not needed anyway. And I just started recently doing this like this, where I will now categorize this email as ready to load, just so that it's still in my inbox, but now it's categorized as like in process, if you will. And I do that because if here over the last couple of months, I've been getting distracted, or in the sense of a lot of different things are going on. So I will try and, you know, process a couple of them at a time and at least maybe get them like in bill.com, knowing that I only have 10 or 15 minutes and I may not actually get to the next step of processing them in bill. Again, this is based on like however you process. You may never use that category or ever categorize it. The first couple of months, I didn't do that. I would just, uh, open it, add it to the Excel file, and go right to bill.com and process it like 111 all at the same time. Um, and then it kind of depends on the day. Like if I know I can only do part of the process, this is how I've been kind of managing that, so that I know that the next time I have 5 or 10 minutes, instead of having to deal with the spreadsheet and kind of looking at the invoice, I know I can go directly to bill.com and just kind of click through those very quickly and get those processed, and then go back to the spreadsheet and then just change the toggle from ready to load to uploaded and ready for approval. So this kind of, you know, processing really becomes personal, like however it makes sense to you. But for right now, this is how it's been making sense to me, knowing the time that I had to be able to dedicate to the invoice processing and wanting to get something, or at least like when I see 15, for example, it makes me nervous. But I also want to start getting, like you said, timely processed. So it just kind of depends on, um, given that this particular responsibility for me was a true add-on, it was the best way I could do it to keep it moving forward. um, so I don't know if any of that was very long-winded. If you have any questions about that before I keep going and do a couple more, and then we can go into Bill.
Um, Thanks. I will be following along and taking notes, and I will rewatch the recording and later structure my question properly, and I will bring them to our next session. It's okay?
No worries. So then
Okay.
I'm gonna go to the next invoice. Annie Jorgensen, like I said, is a contractor. So not only will you get invoices from her for other um, contractors, you will actually get an invoice for her work. So that's what this invoice will be. And I'm just going to open this and then go back over to the spreadsheet and start typing her name. And then again, just ready to post because I'm about to send it to bill.com. I'm going to put the invoice number if I can type it properly. Invoice date is 10/15. And then 2,500 and October. And so most of the time I don't copy it from there. I just copy it from a different.
Okay. I understand who your explanation on the personal workflow in I understand that, but I want to see again the recording.
Right, and I think I lost you there for a minute. That was weird. It like had to log back in, so you might have lost some of me there for a minute. Um, Okay. So that's that one. I will then go back to email and I will forward that. And then I'll just categorize that as ready to load. Close that. I'm going to do, let's see if I can do one or two more real fast. That way we can do a handful together. So then 24/7 is another, you'll get used to these. This one is a weekly invoice. So 24/7 is the vendor right here. And then
So after the data entry, we go back to the email to forward the invoice, right?
yes, exactly. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay.
And then what I do too sometimes, because I know I haven't moved all of the ones that have already been paid. In this case, I know this description is a little bit longer, so I go ahead and just copy it from the previous like week, if you will. And let's say week ending 10/12. And again, this invoice description honestly is more for yourself. Again, I actually added this column after I took it over from Manuel, because it's not like you can't go into bill.com and like actually see the invoice and what it's for. It just helped me, like I said, help me feel a little bit better. Like, okay, did I miss a week? Did I miss a month or something like that when I kind of do what I just did and like filter on the vendor, like when I'm adding like a new one that I know will still be in the queue up above, or still on this list, and copying like the description down. And then we'll do that. We'll go over here, and then we will go ahead and forward this one, and then we'll go ahead and go into bill.com. Because that basically all that start doing is the same thing, if you will. So we just did 3 invoices. To summarize, I went into the accounts payable email inbox, started kind of at the bottom, if you will, of the inbox, with the latest one. Again, this one we're not doing right at this moment because it requires a vendor creation. So what we did do is go straight to 3 invoices that were already set up. We've been paying these folks, and then opened each individual email, added the data to our offline tracker, and then now we're going to go into bill.com. Uh, so bill, and I think I can't remember if Laura already gave you access to each and every, or if that's also still on our to-do list, but we'll make sure that you also have each and every access for bill.com. And then the other thing is too, what's nice, or I should say nice, but what's helpful by doing, 2 or 3 or 4 invoices that way. And sometimes here recently for me, not necessarily going directly into bill and processing it all the way through. Depending on the internet and whatever the case may be, sometimes it takes, a minute or 2 or 3 to show up in the inbox. So that's the other reason why here over the last month or so, I've been doing it in kind of 2 different steps. And I didn't understand on it, not understand, but Manuel Guzman did that too. Like he said to me, like, I will process like the whole inbox and load it to bill.com. And he's like, sometimes I have to go and do something else. And then I'll come back to it and then finish the process. And then I was like, well, why don't you just do it all from start to finish, which is what I did, the first handful of months. Because I would, like, especially if I was able to do invoices at any point in time. Like if I was seeing something pop in that email, I would just go ahead and process it because it was kind of it was an easy thing to get done and off my list of things to do. And it was, it took 2 or 3 minutes. But then when I was starting to get a lot of invoices or I was getting behind for various reasons, then I could understand why Manuel Guzman was doing what he was doing, because sometimes you have to break it up, depending on what other responsibilities are going on that day or that week. So again, everyone's going to process it differently. So Odyssey, we did that a minute ago. Coming into bill.com. So these are the three that we just sent to Bill from our inbox. And then we just start entering them. And I mentioned earlier this week, the biggest thing is just to make sure that bill.com is picking up the right information from the invoice. Many of the invoices are pretty good. And I also noticed the platform itself is getting pretty sophisticated and better than it was even 6 months ago when I was starting to use it. It's not to say that it won't pick up the wrong thing every once in a while. And that's where it's just a matter of, the 5 or 6 cells that we have to just make sure that it's picking it up right. And the good thing is, at least there are, in fact, like 2 other people that will have to approve it and make sure that it's right. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to catch an error either. But hopefully between 3 people, if something was missed, that it won't be processed exactly, or won't be processed with any errors. So here we go. So invoice number, it picked it up properly. It should default when Luthia, and then like when I was doing it and when Luthia would do it, the payment term automatically should default to whatever the contract is internally, which you may or may not know that, what the payment term is. Most of the time they will put it on their invoice. What I will tell you is probably almost, we'll say 95% of, each and every invoices are net 30. I remember right now there is one vendor that is net 15, and I think there's 1 or 2 that may be like net 45. But the ultimate default should be net 30. I did mention that to Laura, I think earlier this week on our call. I don't know that it will change, but I have mentioned to each and every team where they can, and most likely in an ideal world for them, even from a forecast and cash perspective, they should really consider like increasing that payment term to longer. So at least net 45, because as I mentioned on the phone earlier this week, that net 15 is a really tight payment term. And at least the one individual or the one invoice that is getting that is pretty, she's been working with each and every for a really long time. So she knows that she will get paid. It may just sometimes every once in a while, it could be, 1 or 2 days later than exactly net 15 because of when she sends her invoice. And then when the weekends, because like the weekend days are part of that net 15, which is why I've been saying to them, it's a really short time period. And especially here in the next couple of months, when we have a lot of holidays, that also counts. So then you have even less time to process that invoice, unless you're like right on top of it. So hopefully that one that's at 15, we can get to net 30. But like I said, this should, for most vendors, already be set up with a default. And then, like I said, you can kind of see most of them will also put like their due date. So you'll see November 10th over here, and it will say November 9th or November 10th over here. I leave that most of the time. I never change this, unless for some reason I've been noticing the system, I don't want to say paying it late, but like if this due date is November 9th and it's due on November 10th, I'll leave it. But if that would have come up, if this was a different vendor that I know we need to pay this like on time, like no ifs, ands, or buts, or they're gonna, charge us for something, I may tweak this date even like a day or two earlier. But that's just something that you'll start seeing and making that judgment call. Like I said, most of the time it's 30 days. I don't mess with it. I like let it be. But based on the receipt of the email and how long it's going to take, and especially like in these upcoming months here in November and December, just like you guys in Costa Rica do, we're going to have a lot of holidays coming up, and I might tweak that a day or two so that the moment Lauren or Taylor release that payment, um, it will pay a day or two out earlier than the due date, just to make sure that it gets there on time. But again, that's a kind of a learning process. So this one brought it over perfectly fine. I think it's because this description is the same every month or every time I've seen the invoice. And then the amount is 6,000, which we already saw. And then Allison, the approver, already comes in. I have nothing to kind of, put in notes for her as a reminder or anything. And actually, this is one of those ones. Hold on. That might. So yeah. This is one where I think I will forward this email to Allison as a reminder that Annie approved it already. So the influencers are slightly different than our other invoices. So in this case, it's almost like a two-step approver process where Annie, the contractor who is directly working with the influencers on behalf of each and every, will forward the invoice and say this is approved for processing, making the comment, if you will, that she's already seen the production or the outcome of the influencer's invoice. And so that helps Allison know that the work has been completed. So I will, on these particular invoices, at least say something to Allison like, per Annie approval email sent to you today, 10/17/25, and we'll send that here once we create this. So I'll hit create bill. And then before I forget, I'm going to go ahead and forward this to Allison. And just add that to the subject so she knows it's not necessarily an invoice that she needs to do something with, but knowing that this is one that I just loaded in bill and it's providing the approval from Annie. So Allison, approval email below from Annie. I just loaded this invoice into bill.
I can confirm that I have access to build it account for each and every.
Yep, you do.
Yeah,
Great. Okay,
you
that's awesome.
a screenshot.
Great. So if you click on, just as a curiosity, if you click on each, if you, oh, I can't talk. If you click on the each and every company, I'm curious if you then see the same thing that I'm seeing right now.
Yeah, let me show. Uh, Here and yeah,
Excellent.
looks like
Great.
okay, great.
Awesome. That's one thing we've
Mm,
done already.
okay,
Okay.
and I'm stop
Okay.
sharing.
And
Okay,
then let's see here.
okay,
All right.
great.
So then we will, so then the only thing so we just did was send that to Allison, who is the each and
Okay,
every team member that will process it. But we forwarded her this invoice or the email from Annie that it was approved. The only thing I then do is I go ahead, in this case, I'm going to go ahead and remove the kind of tag on it. But then I just put them in monthly folders. Um, just that's how we've set up the organization of it. Again, if there's a better way, if there's a different way that you do it on native, that this is again all on you as it relates to how you organize. So this is how Manuel organized. This is how I've been organizing it. Whatever makes sense to you. Because at the end of the day, in theory, you should never have, or I should never. It's pretty rare when I've had to go into Outlook to find an email about an invoice because most of the time with Bill now or with Bill.com for each and every, you're just going in directly to Bill.com and looking up the vendor and like what's wrong with the invoice or where is it in the queue or has it been paid. Every once in a while, I've had to go back, to the invoice or the communication in email to find it. Um, and the search functionality in Outlook is pretty good, even if I didn't know exactly which folder I put it in. But if they ever say, oh, it was, the invoice dated October, whatever, it's going to at least then be in the October folder. So that's just kind of how we've done it. Um, Annie, again, same thing we just did, kind of processing the bill directly in or processing the invoice in bill and looking at the components here. So the invoice number is accurate. Again, net 30, invoice date. The one nice thing about bill.com, it also kind of draws the line as to what it's pulling or what it's picking up. The due date is obviously calculated based on the payment terms, her fee, and then what I do here, and it's picking up, funny enough, I think, so yeah, so this should be October in part one. Wouldn't have been that big a deal if the description is wrong, because obviously you can always come back to Bill and see it. And then Allison is the approver, automatically brings that in, and then just hit create bill. And then again, 24/7, entering the bill, entering the invoice. The invoice number is picking up properly. The invoice date, also proper. Net 30 default from the system. The amount is picking up the right amount. Right there, 27,300, 2730. Goodness, 20, it's been a long week. And then work or week ending, and we'll change it to what's here in the invoice. So week ending October 12th. I'll just type that last part in instead of using bill.com's copying capability. And then I just hit create. So yay. I always love to see that little icon when I'm in bill.com. It makes me happy some days. And then sometimes it's the little things, Manuel. So
Okay.
it just that makes you happy. And so then I'll go back to the spreadsheet for a minute. And then literally all I do here now is instead of ready to post, and sometimes I even highlight these if I'm going to like do part of the process and like leave and come back. Because we were kind of doing it all at the same time. I didn't do that. Again, personal preference, how you manage stuff. Uploaded pending approval. So now all of those are sitting in the queue for Allison to approve. And I just hit save. And then I go back over here to the inbox and in essence, if you will, kind of move it along and put it in the October folder. And again, that was probably an extra step tagging it, but I've kind of gotten into that mindset here recently where if I do a whole bunch of them at the same time, I'll tag it as ready to post or ready to process, and then if I'm just going to do it right, kind of, if you will, right from the inbox itself, I may not even tag that. I will try to get at least some of these follow-ups processed, or not processed, but I need to check on why they're still sitting here. I think it's just a matter of I need to save some sort of attachment to our offline file versus anything else to process. But then like the rest of these like are the same thing. So just more invoices to process that, like you can see here, were from Wednesday, Thursday, and now Friday. Just because the last couple of days I've basically been in meetings all day, which has been nuts. But yeah, that's pretty much it as it relates to the invoices themselves and the inbox. What I will also say too is, and this is, I will call it a Valerie Outlook organization. I also, sent wise, I tend to move all of my sent emails to respective folders as well. That way they're all together. And so like we just processed these 3 invoices today.
Yeah. So the for influencer invoices, I need send the any
Yes.
approval to
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Okay, I got you.
And that should be so like I've tried to keep that up to date in here too. So whenever you see like Allison as the approver, so let me go here. You will also see, and I'll make sure that I update the notes, but it should say what I think I need to do is update that to put that as a reminder, because I did have that on here. Yeah, let me make that a note or a follow-up. I will just make sure to add that in the notes over here too, just so like if you try to remember like, oh, which one do I need to send like to somebody on the team, that will also be directly here. I know that, actually, you know what? I'm doing the wrong one. That's why you're not seeing it. So Annie, approver first, Annie. If you click on Annie Jorgensen, over here, it will say need to send Annie's email approval. And I need to change that from Taylor to Allison because they just recently switched each and every team member as to who was approving the influencer invoices in Bill.com. So it used to be Taylor North. Now it's going to be Allison. So I will make sure that this is up to date. And instead of like Taylor's initials, I'll just say Allison. So that's helpful for you, hopefully. That it's any invoices from Annie, who is the contractor, with her approval, need to be forwarded on to Allison within each and every team as kind of her backup or as her backup documentation that it's okay to approve them. And a lot of times, Annie will copy Allison, and sometimes either she forgets or I might just need to remind her, like, hey, any invoices that you send to this each and every email address, please just go ahead and copy Allison. And then that way you wouldn't even need to do that additional step to forward it to Allison, because then she would already have it.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, so let me think through this. So end to end.
Thank you for clarifying the Allison is the new approver.
Yes, I will make sure to update that. There's a bunch of things that have happened over the last month or two that I definitely need to at least clean up the spreadsheet for you before I hand that off to you, because
Yeah.
otherwise it will be confusing. But yeah, so just to summarize, so basically this email inbox, I will eventually, over the next day or two, figure out how to get that so that you can see it as well. But you work kind of out of this inbox. So you'll see this number, you'll see a number, and then it's like, oh, I have invoices. You come in here, and then however you want to process it through, like one at a time, a cluster of them, a couple of them at a time, or whatever. If you're keeping on top of it, or however you're managing this with your other responsibilities, like if you every couple hours see a invoice pop up and you want to do it right away, that's your call. If you want to wait for 4 or 5 to build up and do it, that's fine too. You come in here, you look at the invoice just real quick, and then you put it on the outstanding invoice tab, and then go to bill.com and actually submit it, and then kind of, tidy up.
Um,
Because then you're done with it. And
that cover the full process for the inbox to build.com entry. I understand that.
yep.
And you ask me, I don't understand your last question.
Um, oh, like to clean, like when you're done with like when you finished it and put it in the folder.
Um,
I'm not clear what the question was.
I, I'm sorry. I appreciate the flexibility regarding my personal workflow and timing. And thanks for working on guaranteeing me access to the invoice email inbox.
No worries. We'll get that done so we can start seeing it yourself. Okay. I think that's probably a pretty good stopping point. I at least wanted to kind of start that since we weren't able to kind of physically see it earlier this week. I know we looked at the spreadsheet via Laura's computer. Um, and so hopefully seeing that provides a little bit of perspective of how we um, process the invoices. And maybe with your experience on native, you guys have a different database or even a better way to manage the offline sheet. Because obviously we know that Bill.com has a bunch of reporting, but sometimes it's kind of nice to have a detached, offline spreadsheet that is not um, dependent on Bill.com or dependent on the system so that hey, do I need to bug anybody like, hey guys, something is due and you guys haven't approved it yet or whatever the case may be. I will show you, there is like a couple of reports that we do kind of once a week as it relates to like this process, like where it's approvals. Um, Also something that's in Bill.com that I'm hoping that I can get the team members who are those approvers, I should say, excuse me, the payment releasers, just to have them directly go into Bill.com and run that report themselves. Because I will be quite honest, we've been kind of hand-holding the team a little bit, in my opinion, too much. And they can easily go into the system just like you and I do to run that same report. Um, so we'll see how far I get to see if I can get them to, to do a little bit of work on them on their own. But I will show you, just remind me so you can add that to the task list too, to show you kind of the offline file that we've kind of created that will come from Bill.com, that is basically like what are the payments in the queue that either approver one or payment releaser need to, get a
Yeah,
list to help them, remind them, like, hey, go do your job and go approve the invoices. I'm hoping to maybe get that off of both of our plates so that they
I
just go in.
understand that the goal is the is to shift the reporting responsibility to the payments releasers.
Yeah, because it's already in the system. It made sense before when we were in JP Morgan or the bank account directly because there was no reporting from the bank. Like, hey, you have these, invoices that you've loaded for wire transactions. That was a very different process because of the system that we were using. In this case, as you're aware, I mean, we're using a invoice system that will show you where an invoice is in the queue, meaning it's ready to approve or it's, needs released. And I believe that the additional reporting that I'm doing that I inherited from Manuel Guzman is a remnant of the old system, meaning like when we used to just do wires directly out of the bank account. So I'm going to like try to get the team just to go directly to the system anyway, because for example, as you're also aware, when you're in Bill.com, if it decides to come back up, um, when they log in to Bill, um, there is an overview tab that for the first approver, so the person that's approving the original invoice, it's already there. Like if I'm Taylor and I decide every Friday afternoon or whatever day of the week, I'm going to log into bill.com, I can already see that I have two, and all I need to do is click on here and go approve them. I will say yes, for the releaser, there isn't this nice, system like dashboard. You have to do one more little thing. You have to go out over here and kind of run a report that
Okay.
we can set up for them here. That's what I'm going to try to do versus us having to do that additional Excel file.
Yeah, I understand the push to have the payment released. Use the system directly.
Right. Because there's only two of them. I
Yeah.
mean, and I was talking to one of them the other day, and she's like, have you sent out that report recently? And I was like, well, can't you see that yourself? And she's like, well, yeah, technically I can, but I kind of do wait for that file because it reminds me. And I'm like, okay, guys, come on. Like,
Yeah.
maybe you just need to put a reminder on your in your calendar to, you know,
Yeah.
go look to see if there's bills for you to pay. But anyway, I'm working on that.
I see.
I'll keep you posted.
So the overview tab simplify the task for the first approver.
Right. And I need to find out, and maybe you may know this, and it's just the way we have created ourselves in Bill.com. Maybe there is another role within Bill.com that would allow that releaser to easily see like their invoices. Maybe that's something for all of us to see if it's possible. Because if we can get a dashboard view for that releaser or for like payments to be released, um, maybe it's even me just like doing a chat with Bill.com and saying, hey, is there an easy, because that feels like at least this last couple of months that they're getting really sophisticated um, with additional like um, like even my dashboard here has changed over the past 2 weeks alone as to what I can or can't see on this, like this customized overview. I need to just ask the question: is there a like a bill releaser um, grid or dashboard that's possible? Because then that would make the processing a little bit easier too, because it's like one less manual Excel file that you have to create, which I find kind of annoying myself. But so we'll see. But yeah, so for now, that's processing the invoices. I will make sure if I think of anything else or as I'm processing the other ones today, if I missed anything, I'll make a note of it and then we can talk more next week.
Okay.
Okay. And then I will also look over
I
the spreadsheet that you sent to see if you've captured everything that we're transitioning to you versus transitioning some of what I do today to Luthia directly.
okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Great.
Awesome.
Um.
Well, have a fantastic weekend. Hopefully you have some fun
Thank you.
plans.
You too. Uh, uh, that this was a great overview. I'm clear on the process now.
Good.
Um, um, I will structure my question after review the video with pauses, and I will bring those question up in our next meeting. Mhm. That okay?
Yeah, I lost you for a bit, so I don't know if
Okay.
your internet is not
Okay.
great right now.
I'm trying to say I'm paying close attention and following the process, and I will structure my question after reviewing the video with pauses, and I will bring those questions up in our next meeting. And I um, really appreciate your showing me the end-to-end steps.
No worries.
Thanks. Thanks.
Great. Have a great weekend. Take care.
You too. Put a
Bye-bye.